this video, we'll be looking at extensions and how they work with chords. Extensions are used in jazz to provide greater harmonic interest in chords. Here's a typical chord, C major 7. Now, we can spell it with one of its extensions, making it C major 9. And this is the chord with another level of extensions, C major 13. Extensions add extra flavour to a chord, but crucially, they should not affect a chord's quality or function, i.e., a dominant chord will still be a dominant chord. Therefore, all of the chords above are root chords, or 1 major 7 chords, or 1 major chords. Where do extensions come from? Up until now, we've only been using 4 notes from our modes for our chords, 1, 3, 5 and 7. The remaining 3 notes referred to as 9, 11 and 13 are known as extensions. The general principle behind extensions is that they are diatonic to the mode or scale appropriate to the chosen chord. So the scale above is C Ionian, which is used for a 1 major 7 chord. In this case, C major 7. So let's look more closely about how we can use the extensions from this mode to respell the chord. Chords are built and named in diatonic thirds, but they can be voiced differently. This is obvious in simple 4-note chords: root, 3rd, 5th and 7th. Extensions are made up of the rest of the diatonic scale. Take a look at the 2nd note of the scale. To create a chord, we need to stack it up diatonically in thirds, so above the 7th note. Rather than leave it where it is, we take the 2nd note, we move it up an octave, and it becomes the 9th note. That's why it's known as the 9th. The same principle applies to the 4th and 6th notes in a scale. To continue to stack the chords in diatonic thirds, the 4th becomes the 11th and the 6th becomes the 13th. Up until now, we've been describing chords using only 4 notes: the root, the 3rd, the 5th and the 7th. So in this scale, C major, we can then create this chord, C major 7. The 9th is a D, so we add it to the chord and the chord becomes C major 9. As you can see, the simple chord here has a major 7 within the chord, even though it's a major 9 chord. By adding a major 9, we don't need to write a major 7 in the chord symbol. Put simply, if we see a major 9 in the chord symbol, we assume it already has the 7th in there as well. Let's look at the 6th note, or the 13th of the scale. The 13th in this case is an A, so we add it to the chord and the chord becomes C major 13. As you can see, the chord here has a major 7 and a major 9 within it already, even though it's a major 13 chord in its spelling. By adding major 13, we don't need to write major 7th and major 9 in the chord spelling. If we see a major 13, we already assume it has a major 9 and a major 7. You might be wondering why we didn't add an 11th as an extension to this chord. Let's find out why in a second. There are a couple of important conventions when picking an extension for a chord. The first is the Group 1 and Group 2 convention. When picking extensions, we access them from 2 groups, picking 1 extension from each group. Group 1 is the 9ths. So we pick an extension from the 9ths, which could be flat 9, natural 9 or sharp 9. The other group, which we also pick another extension from, is around and including the fifth. So obviously the fifth, but you have the 11, the sharp 11, which is the same as the flat 5, the 5, the sharp 5, which is the same as the flat 13, or natural 13. There's also some important conventions when picking some extensions for a chord. Avoid notes. Remember how we didn't use an 11th on the C major chord earlier? This is because of avoid notes. As we saw a second ago, on some occasions you'll need to choose between avoid notes. Remember how we didn't use the 11th on the C major chord earlier? This is because of something called avoid notes. As we saw a second ago, on some occasions you'll need to choose between either an 11th or a 13th from group 2. Earlier on, we chose a 13th for the chord. Why is that? Well, some extensions are considered avoid notes in certain chords. This is to avoid dissonance. That said, ninths will work on all chords. So here are some rules. On a 2 minor 7, we tend to avoid the 13. On a 5-7, or a dominant, we avoid the 11th. And as we found out earlier, on the 1 major 7, we avoid the 11. Using the information we've just seen, let's look at some examples of extensions on common chords. We've looked at the root major scale extensions. Well, how about some others? Let's take a closer look at our 2 chord, the Dorian, as used in the 2 chord in the major 2-5-1. Here is the basic chord symbol for a 2 chord, and underneath the guide tones. Using our new rules we looked at, we know that we need one extension from group 1, which is from the 9s. In this scale, you'll see, which is a Dorian, you'll see that the 9th is a natural 9, as in it's not flattened or sharpened. So we add this, and that creates a new chord symbol, E flat minor 9. What about the group 2 extensions on a 9 chord? Well, for the 9 chord, when a chord is written as 9, like we've got highlighted here, you have to choose the 5th from group 2. If you want to add something other than the 5th, so in this choice from group 2, we need to remember our avoid note rules, which feel free to rewind this video to have another look at the rules. And for the 2 chord, we avoid 13s. Therefore, we can't add a 13, so we take the 11. Remember that the 9 will already be there in the chord. And then you respell the chord so it's an E flat minor 11. So as you can see, we've now gone from a standard 2 minor 7 chord to a 2 minor 11 chord with all the appropriate extensions added. Remember that whilst the chord is spelt differently, it still has the same function in a major 2-5-1. So you can replace the 2 minor 7 with 2 minor 11 in a major 2-5-1 chord. Here's the Mixolydian dominant mode, or chord, as used as a 5 chord in a major 2-5-1. Our 9, or group 1, is a natural 9. Our avoid note in a dominant 5-7 is the 11th. So we add a 13 from group 2, which means we can respell the chord, in this case, as D13. Whilst the chord's spelt differently, it still has the same function in a major 2-5-1. You can replace the 5-7 with a 5-13 in a major 2-5-1. And lastly, here's the Ionian, or root chord, or major chord, as used in the 1 chord in a major 2-5-1. Our 9 is a natural 9. Our avoid note in a 1 major 7 is the 11, so we add a 13 from group 2, which means we can respell the chord as F major 13. Whilst the chord is spelt differently, it still has the same function in a major 2-5-1. You can replace the 1 major 7 with a 1 major 13 in a major 2-5-1. Sometimes chord symbols can decide extensions for you. Let's take a look at an example. Here's a 2 chord from a harmonic minor 2-5-1. Our 9, or group 1, is a flattened 9. However, we have no choice for the group 2 extensions. That's because the chord symbol already has a flat 5 written into it. So we must choose the flattened 5th from group 2 if we're sticking to our rules. We then respell the chord, and now, because it's the same function of chord, you can now have a 2 minor 7 flat 5 flat 9 in a minor 2 5 major minor 2 5 cadence. Let's have a brief look at some few more examples. Here's the 2 chord from a melodic minor 2 5 1. The group 1 is a natural 9. Group 2 has to be the flat 5 as it's a chord symbol. The big news here is that we've looked at two different ways of spelling a 2 in a minor cadence. And the difference between them is that the 2 chord from the harmonic minor has the flat 9, whereas the 2 chord from the melodic minor has a natural 9, as you can see highlighted here. So just by including a 9, as opposed to a flat 9, in this chord, indicates we're using melodic minor language. A subtle but clear distinction. Here's some other chord types with extensions. The 5 chord from the harmonic minor, Mixolydian flat 9. Here's the 2 extension groups. And here's how you respell the chord. From a C minor 7 flat 9 to a C minor 7 flat 13 flat 9. The altered chord, as used as the 5 chord from the melodic minor. Here are the extensions. Notice how you can use a flat 5 from group 2 to distinguish it from the previous harmonic minor. And then you can change it from a C7 flat 9 to a C7 altered for full extensions. And here's the 1 chord, the C melodic minor. With the melodic minor, to show it's melodic rather than harmonic, we replace 7 with 6. Here's the 9. And our group 2 extension has to be the 5th. This is because we can't use the 13, as we have a 6th in the chord, which is the same note. So we just respell the chord, so it becomes C minor 6 9, which is a 1 chord in a minor cadence. Using this knowledge, we can now write extensions into our common chord sequences. Here's a 2-5-1 major sequence followed by a 2-5-1 minor sequence. Let's add all the 9s onto the chords. You can see that on the minor 2 chord, by using a flat 9, we're indicating harmonic minor harmony. Let's add more descriptive extensions from group 2. You can see that we show that the 4 chord is Lydian by adding a sharp 11. And we've now swapped the minor 2 chord into melodic minor harmony by adding a natural 9. The 5 chord and the 1 chord in the minor cadence are also from the melodic minor language. However, the turnaround chord is back to harmonic minor language. In the next video, we'll start looking at more substitutions